Okay, hopefully everybody can see that that's up. Yeah, so I think everybody's also knows Darcy at this point. So I don't know if you need to do your introduction, but
Can
maybe for
pass.
the people on the recording.
Oh, that's okay. So I'm Darcy Pritchett. My background is in aerospace, but now I'm a scientist, grad student at Drexel University, and I am passionate about science and science communication. I'm on the autism spectrum. I'm also dyslexic and dysgraphic, and and this mission is very, very personal to me because I was someone who didn't get the access to science that I wanted when I was younger. I got it later, and so yeah.
Cool. Keegan, do you want to go next?
Hi, folks. I'm Keegan. I'm autistic and I use they, them pronouns. I currently serve as Executive Director for Yes of America United, which has been serving our local disability community in Tampa for over 20 years. And then I also serve as Vice President for Fulbrighters with Disabilities, which is a chapter devoted to disabled potential scholars, current scholars, and alumni of the Fulbright program. So those are some of my more disability-oriented initiatives I'm working on currently, but I'm generally interested in all aspects of justice. So bringing environmentalism into the science fair, bringing equity just generally in science education is something that I'm really interested in doing as well. So excited to see you all today.
Nice. If we're going in order of my screen, Ema's next.
I'm Ima Camposano. I use she, her pronouns. I am neurodivergent and was born with a physical disability. So I always say that disabled folks are born activists. So always working in disability rights, disability justice. As a professional, always working with activist groups, activist organizations, how it could be more accessible to folks with disabilities. Disabled folks don't just care about being disability justice, we care about all things. So how we can get involved as far as like any type of advocacy work and making sure it's accessible. I also previously worked at the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities, and now I am a full-time therapist, primarily working with clients who live with disabilities, neurodivergent, chronic illness. So yeah, I have 2 kids, happily married, a couple dogs. Nice to be here.
Very cool. Thank you, Uma. Christina. Oh, I'm not sure your mic is working. Okay, that's fine. I guess we never got out of the stage of having technical hitches at the beginning of an online recording. It's funny because I think it was working fine before. Oh, look, puppy.
This is Dolly. She's very squishy, like the persistence of memory, hence the name.
Amazing.
My partner's been teaching her command, join the call, so that she pops up.
Nice. I guess while we're waiting, Serena, you may as well go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll fill in the space. My name's Serena. I'm a doctoral student at the Florida School of Professional Psychology. I'm getting my doctorate in clinical psych. I just finished my first semester, which is super exciting and went really well. I love it. So I'm super excited to move further with that. In that realm, I know professionally the importance of being able to bring science and education to people of all sorts of different abilities and education levels, and bringing it to everyone, particularly with sensory difficulties. I work a lot in that area. I work with, sorry, I'm losing my voice today. I work with a Down syndrome nonprofit, working with the kids there. And I'm going to start teaching some cooking classes. So I'm excited about that. And then my background is in politics in addition to psychology. So I'm really interested in advocacy and things at the policy level.
Very cool. So what I might do is, Darcy, I don't know how much of a kind of preview that you've given Emma to what we've done with the festival so far and what our plans are.
Very brief. So we might review that again.
Okay. I guess I may as well do it now, because Christina's already heard the spiel, and Emma can have her lunch in peace for a bit. So yeah, we had. Sorry.
I was just saying I appreciate that.
No problem. Yeah. So essentially, we created the festival, as the name implies, for kids specifically with sensory sensitivities, because working in the kind of science communication outreach space and running festivals for over a decade now, I've also gone to many meetings where I've spoken with other people who talk about the science festivals that they hold, and they are always talking about conveying the joy of STEM, which I'm all for. But quite often you find that people haven't considered who is not able to attend these events, because they tend to be very crowded, very loud, can be quite overwhelming. You don't necessarily have warnings about the kind of activities that are going to come up, right? So if something's going to be loud or have flashing lights and so on. And I mean, I believe this is something that's changing, at least with regard to kind of sensory issues for people. But I don't know of many that have dedicated calming rooms or, those kinds of sensory spaces. So, Christina, I'm just going to give my spiel briefly, and then I'll get you to introduce yourself, if that's okay. Actually, can we check if your mic's working?
Can you guys hear me still? Okay,
yes.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Yeah, so that was essentially the premise for creating this particular festival. Although, having been to one of the Yes Fairs where we were vendors, we started to speak with some of the other nonprofit organizations that were there, talking about the disabilities that they support. And I knew at some point that we wanted to expand it to make sure that we could make the most accessible festival that we could, in terms of disabilities, in terms of the language being used, how the science is communicated. And so this was the premise for establishing this festival in the first place. And we got some startup funding to have the first event, which we did at, I don't know if Emma knows of the Amrock site, which is, it's a maker space within the University Mall. And they were kind enough to partner with us, let us use their space. And you're aware. Yeah, it's they were super great in helping us set up. And so after that first event, we got some feedback from both attendees, from some of the volunteers. We had some ideas on how we would like to improve moving forward. And we then got another grant from the Autism License Plate funding body. So we have another $10,000 to be able to organize our next event. And I think long term, the goal is to have this as something that potentially can travel around the Tampa Bay area. So while so far we've been focusing on Hillsborough just because that's our backyard, it would be great to have this in, Pinellas and Pasco and so on. Yeah, so that's kind of the background to it. Christina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hopefully you guys can still hear me. So my name is Christina Spencer, and I'm a new consultant at CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities at USF. It's nice to virtually meet Ema because I'm actually in her former office. So yes, new just started right before Thanksgiving. I come from a education background. I taught pre-K for 10 years in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then when I moved down here, I started teaching kindergarten in Pasco County schools in Zephyr Hills. I sorry. So I taught Gen Ed Pop, not specifically varying disabilities or varying exceptionalities, but I always had a lot of students in my classroom who I had some already on IEPs, and then I also had quite a few who came to us, with pre-K and K. It's a lot of times their first year, so they came to us undiagnosed. So I had a lot of those first-time conversations with parents that I was noticing things that were not developing the same as their same-aged peers. So I have that as my background, master's in education. Also have some background in the medical field doing patient care. And so, yeah, and I'm excited to be joining the Science Inc. Program. I have 2 daughters. Their ages are 8 and 10, and they are both ADHD, so they're both neurodivergent. And so I'm excited to bring them to the event as well, have my husband bring them.
Very cool. Thank you, Christina. And the one little icebreaker exercise I had, although it seems like people are kind of introducing bits of their background and their personality into this anyway, was what's one thing that is bringing you comfort right now? And so for me, there's probably a couple, and one is one of those heated back massages. So I suffer from chronic pain since I was 20 years old because I've got hypermobility syndrome. And that thing, I love that. And I also know there's a bottle of mulled wine somewhere in one of the cupboards, which I'm going to crack open at some point. Yeah, anybody else? Shall I start shouting people out?
Mine is a good one. Something that's bringing me comfort is really bad, terrible for you reality TV.
Fun. Darcy?
Yes, I've discovered dirty matchas, which is an iced matcha latte with a shot of espresso, and it is carrying me right now.
Nice. Keegan?
Well, in this exact moment, I have one of my fidgets. But what I thought of previously was that I really struggle with being cold, even when no one else is cold. And my partner got me a little space heater and a cozy blanket and whatnot.
Very nice. Serena?
I switch over to hot coffee for the few months of fake Florida winter, so that's nice and cozy and comforting.
Lovely. Christina?
So in all sincerity, right now it's this new job because I fought for several years to try and leave the classroom setting. I love teaching and I love being an educator, and I do miss certain elements of it, but I had come to the point where it was very unhealthy for me, my own mental health. And so the shift in work for me has been a dramatic change in my life in a very good way, and very noticeable to everyone around me, to my husband and my kids and my parents and people I see back at the school I was working at, because my kids are still there. They're like, wow, you are a different person in a good way. So honestly, that is like the biggest comfort in my life right now, is doing something that is not mentally unhealthy for me.
That's so much more profound than my mulled wine. But thank you for sharing. So I guess today what we really wanted to do was cover a little bit of some of the kind of nail down some of the details so that we have something that we're planning toward in April. And hopefully assign some roles so that people can kind of put in where it is that they feel that they can best contribute. Whether that's, I mean, partly that's going to be according to expertise, and also just according to, you know, how much time you have to devote to this. And so I should point out that we're missing a few people today. So my friend Mel Rogers is a geologist at USF, and she's also a very adept science communicator herself. So she would be one of our points of contact in order to attract hopefully some more USF scientists to actually participate in the festival setting. And we're also missing Dana and Meredith, who are unfortunately involved in, I think it's some educational training day. And Keegan found them for us at Tampa Bay Watch. So it's if I understand correctly, a conservation educational nonprofit. So this recording is kind of for them as well, and they'll also be able to contribute to certain points of the planning. And now I realize I haven't shared a lot of these resources with people in advance of this call, but we do have a Google Drive into which we're already starting to drop some of our resources, and we've made templates on the basis of the festival that we held in October 2023. So just to quickly run through, let me see. Nope, this is the wrong Google Drive. Stop that. I have at least 9 different emails, and most of them are Gmails of some sort. Okay, that's the one. Okay, so we have a couple of documents which are to do with kind of promotion from last year's event, and for what we can offer in terms of partnerships with other organizations as we start to onboard them. We have a press release from last time, which actually I think got us onto a couple of different TV shows. I think Darcy got to stand in front of the camera at some point and talk about shrooms. There's a little venue map of the previous venue that we created that we that was for people to navigate what the festival looked like. We had a very detailed run of show created by our colleague Angela, who set up for like the day before and the day of with like minute by minute, essentially breakdowns of what was going to happen when. And then we have our festival planning doc. So last year, before we even got to this, we had a little survey that went out to card members and anyone who was looking at our social media channels. And this little survey was just to ask people, what do you want from an event? What might your personal requirements be? And we actually got some really nice input with regard to, well, if you're going to have food, can you please make sure that you don't have things with allergens? And so there are a bunch of things that came out of that that were really helpful for us. And it might be something that we try to put out again this time round. But this is the main kind of planning document. Of course, I'm showing the wrong screen. That's the one. Okay, so this has a couple of tabs at the bottom. So the first section here is just trying to keep track of the tasks that we have to complete and what has been done. And then this is an empty one for 2025 as it comes up. We have a tab that will be asking everybody to fill in their contact details. And once we have some roles assigned, we'll add that too. And if you can see further across, yes, if I scroll, you can also see some of the roles that we would like, not just the organizing committee, but obviously for people to give input in terms of their expertise so that we can make sure that we're kind of reaching all those touch points. We have a tab that's kind of dedicated to each of the booths that we had last year. And again, just the details of who was running them and how they were run. We have another one for our budget, and this is largely based on the kinds of things that we spent money on last year. But obviously these can be adjusted, I'm sure. I don't think the funding body is going to hold our feet to the fire if we say that we're not going to spend money the way it was said. And finally, this is basically all Keegan's work. He suggested a bunch of venues on the basis of some of the sites that they knew and how they might be interesting to us in terms of the notes in the final section. So yes, brief introduction to our organizing documents. So what I really want to do is open up the conversation to when we should potentially hold this event, which of these venues sounds the best. I mean, we already have, I think, we like the idea of one particular venue, but if anybody has any ideas about anything else that might be suitable, I think that now's the point to kind of go into that. So as I said, we're thinking about April, but does anybody know of any dates that would clash with that? I know that there's already the last.
Cards Fiesta is the last Saturday. It's April 26th. I did get confirmation on that.
Perfect. And I think that, again, Dana also pointed out that there's going to be some large conference on at the end of April as well, so they wouldn't be able to do the 25th and 27th. So in my mind, I'm thinking one of the first 2 weekends in April to kind of stay away from draining cards resources as much as possible. And again, I don't know if anybody has a particular preference for anything.
I think that's the right move, doing it earlier in the month, because obviously that last weekend is, like you said, it's both Fiesta by the Bay and it's the Environmental Educators Conference, I think they said. The weekend before that is Easter. And then just my personal preference is for April 12th, that second Saturday. That's spring break, so my little brothers will be in town, and I know they'd love a sensory-friendly science fair. So, little plug for the 12th.
Okay. Yeah, unless anyone's got any strong feelings about it, I'm happy to go with that, because I guess I didn't consider when spring break was and how that might kind of it might be.
Hold on 1 second. I'm looking at Passover. So I'm Jewish, and just give me 1 second to pull out.
Passover is the 12th.
Yeah. So if we do it the 12th, I will be not able to be involved on that level. First Seder is the 12th. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're going to have almost no, I don't know if you're going to have no Jewish presence at all on the 12th.
Yeah. I'm also wondering about other religious observances.
Well, Easter is Sunday the 20th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So
I mean, I know that you're advocating for the 12th. Somebody was, but the 12th, like, is not good from a Jewish perspective. So, like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally makes sense. I am Jewish, so I get it.
So would that be a Saturday? I mean, could
Mhm.
we hold the festival on a Sunday?
Sunday
Or
the 13th.
yeah.
No, because observant Jews are going to be not going and doing anything secular the 12th or the 13th. There's a
Okay.
first night Seder on Saturday and then a second night Seder on Sunday. So,
Okay. So then the week before?
I mean, the 5th is fine from that perspective, yes.
Okay.
I don't know about anybody else's calendar needs.
Okay. So perhaps for now we'll say 5th. Hopefully that won't clash with anything else. So we'll keep that as a placeholder for now. And the other suggestion was, actually, would you mind, Keegan, just talking through some of the venues? I can bring up a little sheet again since.
The list of the venue is a list for where this event will take place.
That's, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
These are the ones that we're looking at.
And the Tampa River Center, is that the one that's by Julian B. Lane Park?
I do not know.
I believe it is, and if it is, the only thing, because I'm not really familiar with any of the other ones, but if this is where I'm thinking of, it's good, it's accessible physically for, physically disabled folks. I've been there a few times.
Okay.
If this is the one by Julian B. Lane.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah. I see the notes say that as well. Yeah. And the other options are the All People's Community Center, which again they have the super accessible playground outside. They also have a space indoors. The only slight issue we would have with that is the fact that it's essentially like 2 basketball courts. So it's an indoor space that would be something that would be potentially difficult to kind of damp down the sound. And it also has really bright fluorescent lights. So while it's helpful for some things, and I think it would be an incredibly affordable site, and I think they have people who have accessibility training among their staff. So that's a possibility, but then we'd have to spend time thinking about how to make it more accessible for people with sensory issues. And then I think there were 2 options, I believe, that seemed like the best focus for you, Keegan, that being the Tampa Garden Club and the Unitarian Universalist Campus. Sorry, I can't speak today either.
Yeah, so with that in mind, that All Peoples might not be the most sensory friendly right off the bat without adaptation. I wanted to look at some other spots. The Tampa River Center, it is the one you're thinking of by the Julian Lane Park. So that's a Parks and Rec facility. It's wheelchair accessible. It's got lots of nice natural light. And then there is an indoor and an outdoor space that we could utilize. The outdoor space is not covered. There's not trees. It's going to be just simply in the sun. But maybe in April, that's not quite as unbearable in Florida. Whereas the Unitarian Universalist campus, that is 5 acres of wooded land. There's 2 different outbuildings that we could utilize for exhibitors. I haven't had the chance to tour it myself to see just how wheelchair accessible that would be, what their pathways from building to building look like. But it is probably the most affordable option on the list. And also this would fall under generally the Unitarian Universalist mission, which has a lot to do with equity and justice. So I think that they may even be willing to volunteer the space for that day. The wooded acreage is also really interesting in terms of having outdoor activities like the volcano experiment, or even having live creatures, or maybe like plant identification walks, that sort of thing. The Motor Enclave is out in the same sort of space out near USF and Mosai and whatnot. It's, I think, a newer venue. It's where USF is going to be doing their Green and Gold Gala in March. And that is kind of interesting because they have a giant racetrack all around, and it's definitely built to be a venue. So there's one main internal structure, which is a giant open room that would definitely house quite a few exhibitors. And then the last one is the Tampa Garden Club. The Tampa Garden Club is right on Bay Shore. It's got a beautiful view of Tampa Bay. And that one I thought might be accessible, even though it looks like their venue rental page is really geared towards weddings. They are a nonprofit and focus a lot on education, particularly environmental education and giving back to the community. They talk a lot about how that's a cornerstone of their mission. And so again, I think that maybe we might be able to work out something with them, but that's just a sort of brief overview of those alternatives.
Thanks, Keegan. So I guess there are some practical issues with these as well. I guess most of them, given that they're venues, they would also have reasonable amounts of parking, to make sure that people can actually go if they show up. So I think, honestly, my favorite of the ones that you described is the Unitarian Universalist campus. Just because pretty much any time of year in Florida, I want to be in the shade. I don't want to be in the sun. And I also love the possibility of having a space where we can, because we've talked about in the past, having exhibits with animals, and maybe have like some foster shelters bring their animals along. And that seemed like an easy place to be able to do that without having too many restrictions. I'm just wondering if there's anything else that stands out to people from those particular venues, and any considerations. I mean, obviously, as Keegan pointed out, that there might be an issue with the UUC in the sense that we're not sure how wheelchair accessible it might be, but I think if that were not a deal breaker, that's one that gets my vote, I think.
Can I just share? So in my experience, what if the facility or the place will be physically accessible, but the parking is like 30 yards away, and then there's a lot of walking, or there's very few disabled parking spots. And then, it's just mostly the walking, at least for me, getting from the parking to the actual building. The buildings are usually, fine and accessible. It's just that distance would be hard for someone like me. So I just wanted to share that. And I don't know, because I don't recognize any of the other places. I don't think I've been to any of the other ones except for the Tampa River Center. And even that one is a little bit of a walk too, from the parking to the entrance. So yeah, and usually, like all good disabled folks, we do a peek before the actual day just to see what our accessibility needs are. So usually when I feel like it's too far, I just usually have my husband drop me off, so that I'm not, scrambling to get there in time. But I just wanted to share that to just as a consideration.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Is there anything else that pops up to anyone?
Obviously, one of the issues is going to be availability, because we could all decide that, one of these places is an ideal spot, and we can bring it to their attention that we want their space for this date, and they could say, yeah, we're just not available. So,
yeah, I guess then maybe we should have a list of kind of in order of preference. So of the ones that you've actually been to, Keegan, I assume you've been to some of these in person?
No, I was really waiting for us to like narrow it down before I started going and talking about, well, and also having a date was something that I was considering, because it's fine and good to go and tell them about the endeavor, but without a date, it's kind of, there's not really any follow-up.
Okay. Yes, so I guess you've been waiting for this meeting for a while to do that. Yeah, I completely understand. So again, I guess in order of preference, if we're considering I suppose accessibility issues should come first, since that's the whole point of the festival. So the ones that are the most accessible, I think in terms of being able to cover the cost of the venue, I don't think that's a major issue. So accessibility and the available date, I suppose, are the two. Now, I know that you are heading off for the holidays, but is there a possibility that you might be able to visit some of these venues before the end of the year, so that we could at least come back and say, yeah, I think this is potentially the place we should go for? Or is somebody available to do that?
I can probably pop in this Thursday if we have like our top 3.
Okay.
I'm happy to help as well. I'm also thinking it might be a good approach might be for us to today determine like kind of a scale for rating each venue, like accessibility, availability, a few other metrics. And so, we can go and just quickly, on a scale of, 1 to 5, accessibility, how does this one rate? And that will just give us a really, easy way to make a decision based on data. And I'm happy to help too, Keegan, if you'd like, someone to tag along or to just split them up.
Cool. Yeah, I think in terms of space, none of them sound like they're going to be an issue. They sound like they will be able to house the number of people that we would like to invite. So to me, I guess it's just these two, and the third one is potentially just going to be like, what does it feel like? Does it feel like a good space to have this kind of event? So I think with those 3, potentially you might have enough to come back with your kind of notes on the venues. Cool. So that's basically what I wanted to do today. That was the main thing that I wanted to cover. The other thing was in terms of what people would like to take on in terms of their roles, how much time you think you would be able to commit to the organizing, and if there's something that you see in this list, or rather something you don't see in this list that you potentially feel needs to be covered. So I think for several of you, obviously, we spoke and we reached out to groups of you because somebody thought you might be an ideal fit for this festival. And yeah, I guess once we start filling this table in as to where you are, I know we've already spoken. Christina has offered her, obviously, her educational expertise to help look over the activities and make sure that they're kind of appropriate for the audience we're trying to reach out to. And I think, I know Ema, Darcy invited you because of your background in disability expertise, and same for Keegan. Serena, you were kind enough to just volunteer through our website. And so I know one of the things that we talked about was potentially you taking on a kind of project manager role and making sure that someone's keeping tabs on the tasks that need to be completed and make sure that they are completed. And so some of these others, for example, fundraising, I'm not desperate to get somebody into that, but if we can continue to raise money for this, or if people see opportunities that they think would be able to help with the future, that would be great. And I guess the last important consideration for us is to have somebody who is potentially more experienced with, excuse me, with kind of community organizing and understanding how we can better reach out to marginalized communities to make sure people who don't necessarily have access to these kinds of events in the first place, like, Christina, we mentioned Title I schools, those kids aren't necessarily going to be able to have the opportunity to have someone necessarily to drive them to this festival, or so we're looking for ways to make sure that we make our event as open as possible to as many people within our community as possible. So yes.
Question. Excuse me, I'm still finishing. My husband is a producer at PBS, and he does short segments on things like this. Would this be something that you would be open to, like having a short segment and like having it air on PBS?
Yes.
Sure. No promises. I'll pitch it to
Yeah.
him and see where he's at, because I know he has a lot of segments he works on all the time. But this would be a great thing to show, and this is happening. It's for folks with we're trying to be accessible. So yeah, I'll talk to him about it. And then who should I put him in contact with? Darcy or?
I think Darcy's probably the best, just because I'm in the UK a lot of the time.
Okay.
I will be back briefly in February, and I'll obviously be back for the month of April for the festival. But yes, I think he is probably the best person to contact.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah. Hopefully that works out, and then we'll be on TV.
Yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, if anybody else wants to be on camera with Darcy to explain what we're doing, I'm more than happy for you to have your however many minutes of fame.
I'm more than happy to let someone else do it.
I feel good about public speaking, so I can help you there. And I mean, a lot of these terms seem like they overlap for me. So, whatever we need, I can probably pitch in some way. And then for our DEI specialist, let me reach out to my contact over at the Hypatia Collective, because they specifically guide a cohort of nonprofits in St. Pete, and might have someone in mind. I know they represent the Woodson Museum, and I think they have some folks at the Sanderlin Center, some different contacts that are St. Pete side, but might suit us well in that respect.
That would be tremendous. Yeah, it might be, rather than kind of fulfilling roles like this, we actually come up with a task list, and the tasks, then it's easier to put somebody's name by a particular task and say, yep, I can help out with this. And I think that will also it'll be easier to gauge kind of time commitments in the process of doing that as well.
So CARD, what we can do is, of course, as we spoke, I can do the education, like kind of review of different scientists' presentations or projects or experiments, whatever
Activities,
we're going to call
yeah.
them, and just kind of check that from an educational perspective. And then I believe that we have some preset sensory friendly trainings, so that I can provide sensory trainings for anyone that we want to do sensory trainings for, or I can help coordinate that at least through CARD. So that would be, I think, kind of the two elements that myself personally and CARD in general would be able to assist with.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And that's one of the things I wanted to point out, is that we want all of our incoming volunteers, like people who are on the day volunteers as well, to make sure that they get CARD training. But I don't know if there's anything that we can kind of suggest in terms of physical disabilities as well, just to give them more of a heads up. So I think, yeah, I don't know, because one of the things that we were thinking of potentially doing was having, for example, Braille, and having more kind of tactile activities for people to have scientists consider how they might be able to adapt their particular activities to make sure they reach out to a broader audience. So I don't know if you have resources or suggestions for stuff like that.
Yeah, I can send that. And also just reminding folks that, you can have autism and spina bifida. You can have autism and cerebral palsy. You can have, it's not just one thing, so just the reminding folks that you could have 2 disabilities, 3 disabilities, things like that. So, but yeah, I can send that stuff over to the resources I have.
That would be great. And we can hopefully try and work that into the training for people who are volunteers outside of the current group, who I think are much more aware of these issues to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely discuss it with my team here and see if there's a way to, work in a bit of that into the sensory training as well, just to kind of broaden that out a bit. As I said, I'm brand new here, so Ema might have a even better understanding of that than I do, as far as like what we're allowed versus what we're not. So like I always want to run everything by my team before I 100% commit to something, until I kind of get a better understanding of, what's within our realms and not.
Okay. Keegan?
So I love the idea of having our sort of task-oriented, just bullet points. And I'm thinking of things that we can do and sort of training adjacent, education adjacent. I'm wondering about 2 different documents maybe that we can give out. One being that I'd love for us to coordinate some kind of social story for this once we have our location settled. That way we can address those concerns of like, where is parking in relation to the building? What are my expectations before we ever get to the day of? And then also I'm wondering if there's some kind of like education toolkit we can put together for exhibitors, just to kind of get ideas flowing about how they can adapt their programs to cater to different sensory profiles, to talk about like One really great experiment I love is all about blubber and how it holds warmth. And so if you're blind, you can touch the one bag that's been dunked in ice water that's got water inside of it, which gets really chilly. And then you touch the bag of like Crisco oil that's been dunked in the ice water and it's not nearly as cold. So how can we encourage folks to think about different ways to present their information? So that might be more of a Dana and Madison thing too. Maybe even we have an education subcommittee that we can kind of talk through those ideas.
I over at CARD, we should definitely be able to put together a social story once we have a location set. That should not be a problem at all. And I can also, run through those ideas with whoever else wants to go over them as far as what you were speaking about, like whether it's a packet or a flyer or something to work with the presenters, the scientists to kind of think through those alternatives.
Super. So I think we already have some kind of notes. Serena, I wonder if maybe we can have a separate little get together and we can see how, if this is the role that you're taking on, we can maybe format these documents so that they make the most sense to you. And we'll start creating some of these, what's the word? Tasks for people to do. It's been a week. And yeah, so I have actually to dash off to another meeting in the next 3 minutes. But very quickly, I want to say thank you, everybody, already for your contributions. And I'm really excited to work with everyone. It's been really nice to speak with you all today.
Yeah.
Folks. And I'll be in touch once I've kind of got Darcy to help me reorder my thoughts in my head as to what we should do next. And hopefully he and Keegan can go and see some of these venues and we can get something set for April. Cool. Thank you, everybody, so much. I have to love you and leave you, so I will end the recording.
Keegan, I threw my phone number in the chat.